And joining us from Bulldog Illustrated, Murray Poole here on the show. Murray, big announcement there from Georgia. Your initial thoughts on Brian Schottenheimer coming in to take over the offense?
Well, Kevin, I think it was a surprise. Let's go back to when Coach Rick, that's kind of his mantra of doing things. All we heard leading up to the defensive coordinator appointment was, Kirby Smart. And then all of a sudden, Jeremy Pruitt is your new man after a couple of days after Grantham left for Louisville. And, Jeremy Pruitt had been mentioned, but certainly it wasn't at the top of the list when that happened. But they're really pleased with that happened. This, kind of like it, Kevin and guys. I think we had heard it would probably narrow down to three guys. Mike Bloomgren, of course, the offensive coordinator at Stanford, Kurt Roper, the former coordinator at Florida, and Georgia's own John Lilly, I think, who did a great job, masterminding a 500-yard offense in the Belt Bowl. So a little surprise, although kind of like Pruitt at the time, Brian Schottenheimer had been mentioned, but it was just a big hire. And like you say, Mark Richt usually gets the guy you're not expecting, and I think that's what happened today. But certainly, as y'all talked about, I don't think they could have got probably a more qualified young man to run the offense than Brian Schottenheimer.
And Murray, for a lot of people, this name came out of left field here. Was there some sort of prior relationship that maybe Mark Richt or somebody on the staff had with Schottenheimer? I know he played quarterback at Florida, but how much familiarity exists between Richt and Schottenheimer, or did exist prior to a couple of days ago?
I don't know, BJ. That's through the coaching pipeline. We always know about. Coach Rick has got so many connections with, pro coaches, pro scouts, certainly looking at his players, players themselves, guys he used to coach with. So I think it's just through the coaching, grapevine. They got rumored this guy might be interested in coming to college ball, and I think that'll maybe be a little question with him. Can he recruit, say, on the level of Mike Bobo, who I think was one of the great offensive coordinators and recruiters in the country? The last time I want to call him Marty. Marty, his dad, of course, a great coach with the Redskins and Chiefs. But Brian Schottenheimer coached Southern Cal tight ends 2000. He coached Syracuse in 1999 receivers. So you're talking about, a good 14, 15 years since he coached college ball. Can he? And I'm sure one of the bigger reasons, guys, of course, he's a quarterback coach. So, and Brian Schottenheimer, Coach Rick, is getting the same thing he had with Mike Bobo, not only offensive coordinator, but quarterback coach. And he's worked with some good ones, as we know. We see Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, Brett Favre, Mark Sanchez, Sam Bradford. Now he'll be working with Bryce Ramsey and Jacob Park to see who's going to come out there. And I'm sure they're kind of tickled to get this guy's qualifications to come to Athens and tutor them.
And what type of situation will he be walking into year number one in Athens?
It's a real good situation, Matt. I think, certainly you start with Chubb, like y'all talked about, to have the running offense, 4 starters back in the offensive line. I think it's just an ideal situation. The only one of the missing pieces is the new quarterback, and that's his forte, being an offensive coordinator and quarterback's coach like Coach Bobo was. So it'll be up to him to bring Bryce Ramsey or either Jacob Park, who we hear so much about in spring practice, that he'll push Bryce Ramsey for the starting job, a lot of people think. So this is a guy who's qualified to tutor them and bring them along. And if that's the only missing piece of the question mark on Georgia's offense, maybe we'd lose some good receivers too, but they've got some good ones back. But with the running game solid, the power eye, and this guy apparently a proponent of that, his job to develop the quarterback, get him up to SEC level. I think the offensive potential just looks just as great as this year or even better next year, Matt.
Murray Poole, Bulldog Illustrated, joining us here on 3 and Out, the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. And Murray, was Brian Schottenheimer, not that Mark Richt will say, but do you feel like Brian Schottenheimer was the number one guy that they were looking at, given all the other names, Kurt Roper and some others that were bandied about in this process?
Yeah, Kevin, that's hard to know, the inside goings-on of that. We do know that he interviewed Kurt Roper this week. He did interview John Lilly this week. A lot of the people thought the favorite was going to be Mike Bloomgren, who was a graduate assistant with Coach Rick at Florida State in 1999, when Coach Rick was offensive coordinator there. Mike Bloomgren, a solid guy at Stanford, but I think maybe the holdup there was that he, I understand he does not call the plays for Stanford. He was offensive coordinator. He's got input, but he's the offensive line coach also at Stanford. So I think Coach Rick wanted a coordinator kind of like Bobo, to guy, in charge of the quarterbacks, the backfield, and calling the shots from that perspective. But you know, everybody's kind of leaning toward Bloomgren, maybe being the guy. That's what I'd heard. You know, before y'all called me today. So you know, you wonder would Bloomgren want to move back to his roots? His wife's from Tallahassee. He's from Tallahassee. Would he come? That would almost be a demotion, it seems like, to leave the offensive coordinator job with the Cardinal and come to be offensive line coach at the University of Georgia. But you never know. But I'm sure they would love to have him in that role. But I think they've got the guy they want, the great quarterback guy, and the guy that's had experience with 5 NFL teams. So it's looking good in that way, you know, Kevin. And I think, but next, I'll be surprised if they don't come up with a really good offensive line coach. While I say this too.
Murray, how similar do you expect Brian Schottenheimer's philosophy, play calling to be to what Mike Bobo did?
Pretty much the same, BJ. That's what Coach Riggs said in the statement today. Excited had him. You know, he'll develop our young guys, the running game and the passing game. I think Georgia's going to be run heavy again next year, but I think they'll throw the ball more with a stronger passing arm back there in either Ramsey or Park. And I think, but it's going to be real close. I don't think Coach Riggs would have brought him if he wasn't going to be a proponent of the power eye, the play action pass, and he's run that too in the NFL, and I think that's what he'll do. And I think the big thing, guys, everybody's wondering about, this keeps a guy named Jacob Eason, the top quarterback in the country, be a senior next year from the state of Washington, and maybe even the top-rated player in the country. I think it keeps him on track to Athens. He was looking to see who Georgia's going to bring in. I just think, like you say, BJ, he'd be tickled to death to have that Schottenheimer's coming in to be his tutor and mentor in 2 years when he arrives in Athens.
And Murray, finally, that was going to be my next question. In terms of recruiting, do you think that everybody, not just Eason, but all of the players will be in favor of this hire, and that maybe we won't see a string of decommitments, which sometimes you can see when you make a new coaching hire?
I think so, Matt. I think, you know, they've had a couple of guys waver in the offensive line, one particular, you know, and I think they say he may look another way, Alabama, but he may look better this way. I think any commitment that's kind of wavering, I think they should be delighted in this hire on the offensive side of the ball, and I think this will pull a couple of guys back. But you never know, you know, if somebody, you know, when you got in a guy named Mike Bobo is friendly and recruiting friendly as he is, and so close to the guys and the families, you know, when he leaves like that, some say, well, just he was my man. I'm not going to Georgia, but I would think with this splashy hire here with Brian Schottenheimer that the University of Georgia is in good shape with those recruits, and where they're either 2, 1, or 3 right now, according to the different recruiting surveys. I think they'll still finish in the top 3 in the country, and I think Schottenheimer is going to get on the recruit trail immediately and convince these guys, I'm your man now. Let's stay at Athens and try to build the Bulldogs up again.
Murray Poole, Bulldog Illustrated, has been our guest here on 3 and Out, the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Murray, we appreciate the time. Thanks much.
I always enjoy it. Thank you, guys.